What's up, guys? Give me a couple moments. We're here. It's Monday afternoon, June 24th here in Sydney. Welcome to another boxing news today. Kind of a slower weekend for boxing's mainstream. There were fights on, Top Rank had fights, but I spent the weekend actually watching the Saudi Arabia UFC card. So anybody who also watches MMA, you can feel free to comment on that. We could talk about that. But the agenda for today, I wanted to talk about what's going on this upcoming week. The next few weeks, we'll talk about the new content we just created for you guys and a couple important questions regarding some American boxing stars and their upcoming fights and another version of what have you done for me lately. So we'll take about a minute. I just shared this Boxing News Today on Facebook. If you're not subscribed to there, our Instagram, Boxing News Today as well. And obviously, if you're talking to me right now, I say thank you because you're subscribed. I guess if you guys hit a notification bell on my channel, every time I do a live, you'll either get a notification. But I think it was Jack last week told me to schedule it. So last week I started scheduling these in about an hour in advance. Today I was on a run and I scheduled it in, but it was only 10 minutes ago. So I'm getting better at that. Any suggestions in terms of like what do you stream? What do YouTubers often schedule? How far in advance? I do these Monday through Saturday. So if you want to get caught up on the dailies, goings on of boxing, join the live stream. If you want to get caught up through the week on specific topics, those are the videos that I do, edited, recorded, all the professional style. Those are up right now. And today I did one on Terrence Crawford and his power. It's filled with statistics. Something I'm getting better and better at is actually giving you guys more specific stats that you want. Through back and forth commenters, usually the ones who are negative, I learned from those. So I want to say thank you. And through some of the negative comments last week, I think the videos are getting better on more specific stats. You could, like, you money at 8 p.m., for example. You like every morning at 8 p.m. Where do you live at, Nasser? Because right now it's my 8 p.m. Sydney time it's 1:30 where I live. You're in Philly. Okay, the Illidale. So what time is it there where you are? So right now in Philly, oh shit, it's 11:30 at night. So you're getting ready. So 3 hours earlier would be, I could do that, would be, yeah, like 11, my 10 a.m. That's I could definitely do that. I'll start doing it earlier. I didn't realize it was already 11:30 on the East Coast and 8:30 on the West Coast in America on Sunday. It's 1:30 here. Since you're from Philly, man, I put up a post in our Facebook group today about 3 upcoming fights. You have this weekend Teofimo Lopez taking on Steve Claggett. You have Shakur fighting in Newark against Harutnian, and then you have Jaron Boots Ennis on the 13th fighting our boy David Avanesyan. And my question was this. Oh yeah, Bam too, man. The reason why I didn't put Bam in this conversation is because the question was for Teo, Boots, and Shakur. Of these 3 American superstars, who really needs, in terms of the career trajectory, momentum, who really needs a breakout performance, like an electric knockout? And I put that question up on the community section here on YouTube, but I also put it up on our Facebook group. And I was shocked. I was shocked with some of the people were saying, because I specifically, Jack's up. Johnny, I'll be on and off. I'm working. My man, appreciate you, Jack. I tried to schedule this in earlier. I was better at scheduling it in, Jack, last week. I was doing it about an hour earlier, but I only scheduled it in about 10 minutes ago because I just got back running. But I was shocked with the question. I said, what American superstar who has upcoming fights, Shakur, Teofimo, or Boots, who needs an electric victory more than anyone else in terms of their career trajectory? And I thought for sure everybody was going to say Shakur, because that would be my end. I think of the 3, Shakur Stevenson needs to look really convincing and needs to knock Harutnian out. In my opinion, if he wants to recapture that momentum he had before the De Los Santos fight. Now, I'm also going to ask you an interesting question about Shakur with his career after this. But Teofimo Lopez, a lot of people were saying it was Teofimo Lopez who needs an electrifying performance over Boots and Shakur. So it's just something to think about. I think Boots is going to look really good. I think the thing about, if you guys don't know who David Avanesyan is, Avanesyan, he's had some losses in his recent fights. He lost to Terrence Crawford. That's the fight Bud fought before Errol Spence Jr. when Black Prime, BLK Prime, did that fight in December of 2022. They streamed it. They were supposed to be this really large streaming new platform. Bud takes that fight allegedly for $10 million against Avanesyan. And Avanesyan, he got worked. He was out of his league. But Avanesyan beat my boy Josh Kelly. There's a Olympian out of the UK, pro boxer. He has one loss. PBK, the white kid, reflex fighter, really smooth to watch. Avanesyan, he's aggressive. So he's going to be there for Boots to hit him. And I think Boots is going to shine. If you guys aren't too familiar or watch too much of Jaron Ennis, we haven't seen a lot of him lately. Fingers crossed that this new signing with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, we get to see him a couple times a year because he's big for that division. 147. Bud's only about, put it this way, Canelo is listed at 5'8". We know he's a super middleweight. He's fought all the way up at light heavy. We got Majimov, who is the 154 champion. The guy Bud's fighting, he's 5'8". Bud's listed around 5'8.5", but we know Bud started his career at 135. Jaron Ennis is somewhere between 5'10 and 5'11". That's what they list him at. He looks longer, and he's big for 147. And Avanesyan is an ego fighter. This is an Eastern European guy who's going to be in your face, going to push the pedal to the metal. He's going to be there to get hit. And we're going to see. We haven't seen Jaron in a while. We're going to see if ring rust is a thing. We haven't seen Ennis since the Roman Villa fight. It seems like years ago. Wasn't that long ago. I think it was last June or July. But I'm excited for that Boots fight. I'll be on working. I agree, Shakur is what you've done lately. Fan criticism from his last 4 words. Jack, here's a question about Shakur, guys. I was reading one of the blogs on Reddit, and this wasn't my question. I wish it was. I'm going to take the question and send it to you guys. They were talking about Shakur should go back down. I guess Teofimo Lopez gave an interview recently. It's his fight week. When these controversial guys during their fight week, they call out everyone. Teofimo called out Bud in this interview. He called Tank a pussy. But he also brought up this thing about Shakur saying Shakur should move back down to either 30 or 126. He said that Shakur's power is evident in the De Los Santos fight, isn't there at 35. He said the 130-pound division is suspect right now. If he would drop back to 126, there's think about the guys at 126 and think about the rumors about Naoya Inoue moving up a weight class. Now, this is all just speculation. It was a fun thought experiment because I would have never thought of putting Inoue and Shakur together. We've been thinking about Inoue and Gervonta one day as a dream matchup, but Inoue and Shakur, that's exciting. But it was the first time I heard somebody talk about that. We'll see if Shakur's power is there at 35 against Harutyan. Harutyan's the guy. His only losses are Frank Martin, and we'll see what happens. Give me a shout out. Throw by 69. What up? Shout out. What a name. Nathaniel, I'm not convinced his stellar performance helps Shakur. Why would it make people who already don't want to fight want to fight him more after a KO? I'm talking about, all right, now, that's a good point. I'm talking about Shakur needing an electrifying performance for the fandom. I think the fighters and the inner workings of the promoters and what needs to happen to sew in certain guys for a fight or for a unification bout, that's going to be the politics of the whole show. I'm talking about before the De Los Santos fight, you were seeing, think about the boxing memes, how many boxing pages on Instagram there are. There were so many more meme photos of Sugar Shakur Stevenson. Now, after the Edwin De Los Santos fight, it's all the haters are saying Sugar's a track star. I thought Shakur was running track. I thought Shakur retired. So I'm more talking about the zeitgeist of boxing, the spirit of the fandom. Who needs an electrifying performance? Because these guys don't act like they read the comments, but they do. It's that whole generation. I did a post on our Facebook group earlier in the week about Tank, Shakur, Teofimo, and now Garcia. Garcia, for other reasons, all have retired in the last year. They've all said, I'm retiring. You know what I'm saying? So I think that is a sign of the younger generation fighters, social media influencers. They read the comments. So needing an electrifying performance to help swing that narrative in their favor. Because that's an element that the older generation boxers didn't have to figure out. And you could say it's a good thing or a bad thing, but, guys like fucking Tyson didn't have to worry about it. Ali didn't have to worry about it. Every generation before social media, they never had to worry about that negative or positive consequence of the negativity from the fandom. You know what I mean? Because before, the only way the fans could reach the fighters was going to the fights, signings. You know, if, I remember I used to live in Las Vegas, and I worked at Planet Hollywood at this nightclub. And this would have been in 2010 and 2011. And throughout the mall in Planet Hollywood, you would every now and then you would see Ernie Shavers at a collectible card. There's like these collectible stores where like you could buy baseball cards, signed autographs, and you'd see Shavers signing autographs. Every now and then Tyson would be there, and there'd be long lines to the door to get the autograph, right? At one time, that was the way you would have a connection with the fighter. Now with social media, these guys, you know, we're connected. We're all connected. And I think the younger generation, they're slowly figuring out how to deal with that negativity. And so great feedback, Mythander, but that's what I meant about who needs an electrifying performance. Keyshawn Davis can't be talking shit about Teo now because he's fighting Madueno, a guy that Steve Claggett schooled. That's what I'm saying. I'm interested to see how Keyshawn looks on that card. Guys, if you aren't familiar, the Newark, New Jersey card, you got Shakur, Keyshawn, and Oshaki Foster. Oshaki Foster's on that card. There's some opportunity, and they're all like 7-1 favorites. That's usually what happens when you get like a feature fighter in their hometown. They put some of the boys on, and they want all their guys to look good for future bigger fights. It's part of sort of like the fraternity of the sport. That's been going on forever. That's why they always need a break, retire, too much anxiety over social media. They need to get offline and fight more time. Of course, man. And this is something though that like once you show us the fans these cracks in the armor, people can be really brutal. You got a new subscriber. Thanks, Throat Pie 69. Yeah, I've been doing these lives for about 2 weeks. I'm open to anything you want to talk about. We talked about earlier. So some of the stats in the video that I posted about Crawford that I don't know if you guys were aware of, whether you're a Bud Crawford fan or not, some of the stats, he turned pro in 2008. He's already a 16-year pro, 40-0, 31 knockouts. Those are already the stats that you guys know. But he's 11 victories in a row or by finish. He's beaten 9 undefeated fighters. If he beats Majimov, that'll be his 10th. Another stat that's pretty fascinating is since the John Molina fight, he fought John Molina, I think, in 2016. He's only gone to the cards. He's only gone to the decision once or twice. Watch the video because some of the stats were new to me. I know the ones off the top of my head, the normal ones from like, you could find on the back of BoxRec. But some of the stats about Bud and his power. Oh, another fascinating thing about Bud Crawford and his power is when he started fighting 12-round fights, because throughout the career, you guys know you grow. You start with 4-rounders, 6-rounders, 8-rounders, 10-rounders. He won his first world title fighting a 10-round fight. That was his world title at 135 against Ricky Burns. When he started fighting 12-round fights, since then, he's only gone to the cards. I think he's only gone to the decision or his knockouts. So I don't want to look at my notes because I'm trying to remember. And I wrote this in a blog. So if you guys want to fact check this. So since he started fighting 12-round fights, he's had 18 knockouts, 18 of his 31 knockouts, and 15 of those 18 knockouts since his first 12-round fight, 15 of those 18 knockouts are from the 6th round forward, meaning that Crawford's not a guy who's trying to knock you out in the early rounds. And it's something that we don't talk about enough with him. We don't really hear writers talking about Crawford likes to compute data. You used to hear old writers talk about Floyd like that. But with Bud Crawford, the narrative usually in the mainstream is like he's a switch hitter. He has power on both hands. He has a high fight IQ. But no one really talks about how patient. We know he's a good counter boxer, but he's a patient counter boxer. And he kind of plays with his food a bit. And a lot of it, I'd like to interview him and ask him this because when you look at his knockouts, 15 out of his 18 of his last knockouts, 6th round, 9th round, 10th round. He has 12th round knockouts, Jose Benavidez. And that goes to show you when he sees you starting to drown, when he sees you struggling to swim, he's drowning you. And it's almost like he takes pride in that. That's a sign of a really smart fighter, also of a guy who carries his power late, and he's done it in every division. Also, come August 3rd, guys, this is why this fight excites me. I'm going to fight. Look, you grew up in Philly. I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, Nasser. So my hometown is Youngstown, Ohio. We don't have a lot where I come from. I grew up, just Google my hometown, Youngstown. A lot of people struggle where I come from. And it was no different. My parents were young when they had me. I had 4 siblings. My point is, when you what was my point? I'm rambling about Madrimov. Oh, I find it's easy for me in these upcoming fights to find silver linings. So I'm not trying to be an overly hype guy, but the reason why that Madrimov matchup excites me is if you look at Bud's his history of statistics, leaning into this 155 fight, Bud's knocked guys out at 35, knocked guys out at 40, knocked guys out at 47. He's been undisputed at 40, been undisputed at 47. If he beats Madrimov and he knocks him out, that'll be the fourth weight division that Crawford has knocked the guy out in, which is fucking impressive when you look at the grand scheme of things moving up. And that'll also be the 10th fighter that he's taken their undefeated record. So there's a lot of other things rather than just this young sort of green mid-20s Uzbek fighter who's storied amateur, who has power, who looks like Golovkin. There's other things too. I think some of the narrative should fall back again on what Bud's done in his career. And it's interesting to see some of the hate Bud gets, especially with some of the posts I do. Big fan of Bud. I hope he doesn't age overnight as Madrimov. Yes, throat pie. 100%. The Madrimov matchup scares me. I've been saying it since it got announced. The Madrimov matchup scares me. I'm starting to see in some of the websites people are taking sound bites from Bomac and how Bomac is giving them sound bites, how they're worried about this fight because of Madrimov's power. Bud would not have taken the negativity. Oh, look at Bud's resume. A fighter only fights the guy who's in front of him. You know what I'm saying? Even if let's say the haters are right with cherry picking, you still have to beat the guy. And look at the long history of boxing. The fighter can only fight the guy who's in front of him, and you still have to win. Most fighters don't win 100% of the time. So even if you're a hater of Bud Crawford, he's fought the guy in front of him, and 100% of the time he's won. And I guarantee, if you guys watch Madrimov, this dude is not cherry-picked. He's a champion. Bud is doing his maneuverability to become undisputed at 54, and this is one of the important stepping stones. The WBA strap is on the line there. We know there's an interim. They threw an interim in the mix as well. We know Seb Fundora has 2 of the other belts, and so Bud's trying to connect the dots. Now, what's going to be interesting is if this fight does get announced between Seb Fundora and Errol Spence Jr., let's say that fight gets announced, and I always tell you guys, I'm doing a prediction video later in the week it has to get done. I have to do prediction videos of Teofimo Lopez and Claggett, and I have to do the prediction video of Estrada and Bam. I can't wait for that fight. So during those prediction videos of who's going to win, if that fight gets announced between Fundora and Errol Spence Jr., because rumor is it's getting announced this week for October, whoever wins that fight is going to have 2 of those belts. That winner is going to fight the winner of Madrimov and Bud. Does Errol, what does he look like against Seb? If he beats Seb, what does Bud look like against Madrimov? And will both of those guys look the same at 54? These are interesting questions because we don't have these answers. And what sort of motivations does EJ have? Did that motivate him watching Frank Martin get on the cusp? Frank was doing great until he wasn't. And, did that motivate him more because he's promoting him to get back in there? Did it motivate him watching Tim Tszyu get beat up? Didn't get beat up. Tim Tszyu lost a close split. Does it motivate him watching the Saudis coming with all the money? Does money even motivate Errol Spence Jr. at this stage? He's a guy that you have one loss and it's a bad loss and people forget, but he still interests me in the division. The 154 is an exciting division all the way. This time last year it wasn't. It's funny what a year could do by a couple guys moving up to a whole division. Now it's exciting. Think about Fundora. You know what I'm saying? Fundora's the guy at 54 a year ago. A lot of people weren't talking about. He gets knocked out against Mendoza, and Mendoza then goes to Australia and has a tough fight against Tszyu, and no one's really talking about Fundora. And then he goes on and beats Tszyu, and then around that same time, Terrence Crawford says he's moving up to 54, and then all of a sudden you're getting Errol Spence Jr. That's an exciting division out of nowhere. So I'm excited to see what happens in the next few months. Errol's cashing out after the Fundora fight, which he's going to lose. This is a farewell fight. The thing about Seb is that he's still young in his frame. You know what I mean? We know he's 6'6". What we saw against Tszyu is a Seb that we didn't see against Mendoza. Fundora is learning. This is the scary thing about Seb for future opponents. Fundora is learning how to use his frame. he never really fought tall before. He would always kind of fight down to his opponent in terms of his stature. He wouldn't, he really wouldn't fight too much behind the jab. He'd stick it out there, but he wouldn't really follow it up with anything. And against Zhu, you started to see a different version of him. I'd have to do more due diligence and see, his long-term coaching. Did he do any coaching? It looked to me a different style of Seb for the better. Fundora fought well in that fight. And don't get it twisted. Just because Zhu had the blood on him, Fundora had a broken face early on in the fight too and fought that whole goddamn fight. A good fight. Didn't make mistakes. Didn't rush in and try to finish Zhu and held on to get the victory. I was really impressed with that. And I'm from Sydney. I'm a Zhu fan. But how are you not a Fundora fan after that? And it's boxing's in a good spot with those guys doing it. Spence might have trouble with that long jab. He was getting tagged by Crawford with a slightly longer reach. Need to come inside and work Fundora's long body for sure. Fundora gets knocked out if Tim doesn't get that cut on his head. Yeah, and these are questions that I wish we would have answers to. But Zhu's a motherfucker. Don't get it. Zhu's a dog. Zhu has that old school style. Put that lead foot in front. Cut the ring off. Zhu's footwork is sneaky. His foot, like people think, when we think footwork, we instantly think it has to be like Sweet Pea Whitaker or it has to be like Josh Kelly. If you know who that is, I brought him up earlier. I love Josh Kelly's footwork. He does things really, or like think about like the Drunken Master. You know what I'm saying? Or Floyd or Shakur. But boxing footwork isn't always how often or how far you move. Sometimes it's the economy of movement. How much space you could save and how much energy you could save with the limited movement. And Zhu's a master at that. Zhu doesn't waste a lot. He doesn't waste a lot, and he doesn't give a lot away in terms of his feints. You know what I mean? He's not too – you'll never see him overly sort of reacting to stuff. If you remember, I think in the third round of Tank versus Frank, we were all live streaming it. I think it was the moment we all kind of knew where the fight was going. Frank looked great in rounds 1 and 2. And then it was round 3, I think towards the middle of the end, Tank threw a sick-ass feint. And Frank reacted to it, and Tank smiled at him. And that's when I was like, shit, because that's when you have a guy. Whenever you have a guy who is reacting like that at that high level to a feint, you got him. And that's something you never see Zhu do. Zhu is very kind of methodical. He goes about his business almost cathartic-like he's just kind of getting it in. Where we at? Spence may have trouble. Fundora gets knocked out. Bam has been sparring with Chocolatito. Those videos, Sammy the Bunny. The videos I had a 20-second clip I put up on our Facebook group of Bam and Chocolatito. And I mean, Chocolatito wants his get back. He had 2 close losses to Estrada. So the value that Bam is getting from those sparring sessions, invaluable. And this is what you got to love about boxing. The fraternity of boxing is when you have champions like Bam, a young kid, 24, who is willing to reach out, knowing that guys who've come before him has answers, has tools, has skills, has tricks that he could give away, and he's willing. I would have loved to be a fly in the room to see the whole sparring. They showed us, I think, 20 seconds. Johnny, I love your content. Thank you, more of the hardcore. I appreciate you. Shakur is a master of controlling this. Hybrid, 100%. People who talk – look, I'm a Shakur fan. I'm not the biggest Shakur fan, but I'm a fan of, like I told you, the minutia of the sport. I'm a nerd of boxing, of the little tiny things that have nothing to do with knocking somebody out or getting knocked out. And Shakur does those little things masterfully. Shakur is a savant on the space and distance. Now, this is why it's interesting. If you guys are just tuning in now, or if you missed the first part, I was talking about, what do you guys think about Shakur actually moving back down to 30 or even 26? Because we'll see in this fight against Harutyan, if the power is there, it might be a real thing. Maybe the power doesn't always follow guys up weight classes. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't at 130 for the long. He's only been at 35, I think, for 3 fights. And this might be his 4th. I don't have the stats. It's something along those lines. But when you look at big fights being undisputed in divisions, it almost looks like if he drops to 30, where he fought the majority and had Pop there, or chases Inoue. I wish I wouldn't have read that today, but now that's in my head. Could you imagine at 126 and Inoue fight versus Shakur Stevenson at 26? That's exciting. I think Chocolatito beat Estrada in those both fights. Guys, if you haven't seen the Chocolatito Estrada fights, go watch those fights. That's why this fight's exciting. The smaller guys do things that the bigger guys, we just can't. If I fought, I'd be a light heavyweight. I walk around, I weigh about 82 kilos, which would categorize me as a light heavyweight. I'm only about 5'11". But the lighter guys, the Bam Rodriguez's of the world, the Juan Estradas of the world, the way they snap, pop, move, angle, it's just electricity. I love watching Bam fight. And he's kind of, he's jumped a weight class, went back down, fought a few, jumped back up. And I just learned through doing a video last week that the belt that Estrada has and the weight class up, Bam vacated to go back down to get another one. So Bam's kind of coming back up to get this belt, which was his. So it's going to be interesting. Shakur can't make that weight anymore. He lost his belt at 26 because okay. That's probably why. And it's something that I have to just put more time into. And this is why I appreciate you guys. I learned so much more through these live streams from you guys than I do in any other sector other than me reading. You know what I'm saying? So I was wondering why, but I guess it was more of a fantasy thread that I was reading on Reddit about what Shakur should do if he doesn't knock Harutnian out. I think he's going to have electric performance. Sometimes power's a weird thing. You know what I mean? Sometimes guys will either have it or they don't have it, or sometimes it just appears out of nowhere. And we'll see what happens. Harutnian's a tough out. We'll see. His only losses to Frank Inoue coming to 26. And there are a lot of good fights to make. Guys, it is Monday afternoon in Sydney. It's a new week. Check the Terrence Crawford video out. I did about his power, some statistics. I'm doing one tomorrow. Tank Davis. If you guys want me to feature anything, let me know. I'm doing 2 prediction videos for the fights this weekend. Bam versus Estrada and Teofimo Lopez versus Claggett. I want to know who you guys like in those fights, and I keep it coming. We boxing fans should share knowledge. Yeah, man. Marv the Hardcore. This is why I started this channel. If you guys go look at all the older videos, I used to use this to interview like scientists. I used to interview athletes. I write books. So one of the things I do, I'm a published author, and I've been doing sports interviews since 2015. But after the pandemic, I did this documentary about this bare knuckle sport called Lethway, where I went to Myanmar. I went with this guy named Dave LeDuc, the world champion. Anyway, as the pandemic happened and 2022 ended, 2023 rolled around, I refound my first love of boxing. I started boxing as a 7-year-old, and I started rediscovering the boxing groups, interviewing the fighters. I've interviewed Larry Holmes, George Foreman, Evander Holyfield. Those guys are actually in my first book. This one called Ungoogleable. This is at bookstores. This is my book. This one came out last October. This is Chris Algieri's in this book actually, but it was the divisiveness, Marv. It was the divisiveness of all the fans about people, because I started this channel, what it is today, documenting the Errol Spence Jr. and Bud Crawford fight camp. I think the fight got announced in April, and then the fight was in July. So that's when I really started doing only boxing. And I was noticing how even the boxing influencers on YouTube, think of all the big guys. I don't know them by names because I don't follow them, but they talk shit about fighters. They talk shit about someone if they lose, and they fanboy other fighters. That's something we'll never do here. I want to come at it from the neutral perspective, talk about both guys. Even if somebody's a big underdog, this dude's a professional athlete. He doesn't need me and nobody talking trash about him. So I appreciate that comment, Marv the Hardcore. It's something that I strive to do on all the forums, this, Instagram, Boxing News Today, and Facebook, to just have a educated conversation about the sport we love and to learn things, man, because I didn't know Shakur, I didn't know about Shakur's struggle making weight. And I knew there was a reason he'd move up for a reason. The methodical stalker, Tim, beautiful style. You put yourself in range. Yes. It's taking down the middle guard, pairing shots, pay later, brave style, Sammy the Bunny, Robert Garcia's Tugelet, Bam. Virgil Ortiz, we didn't even get to talk about Virgil, one of my favorite fighters. But if you follow Virgil's manager on Instagram, I think his tag is manager305. I don't know his real name. I'm terrible with following people, guys. I'm 42. This social media shit's all new to me. I grew up with a rotary phone, so I don't know his name, but I follow Virgil's manager, I think 305 manager on Instagram. He said just today that this week they're announcing who he's going to fight. So fingers crossed, it's a big fight. Virgil's one of my favorite fighters, and we haven't seen him at his best. So guys, subscribe. If you hit the notify button, every time I do the lives, you guys get notified. I appreciate all the feedback. Tune in tomorrow, guys. I got to roll. Let's go.